Her body was never found, only a trail of blood leading behind the DJ booth. That's how they described it. At least, a chilling whisper, a haunting rumor, a preamble steeped in dread to the main event. I'm Talia Green, and for years, all I craved was to make it colossal. As a DJ, I chased the relentless beat, the electrifying rhythm, the elusive, almost spiritual connection between raw sound and human soul. I dreamed of blinding lights, roaring crowds, and a vibe so utterly intense it would obliterate everything but the thundering pulse of the music. And then came the invitation to Mother. Mother, the legendary, the utterly elusive, the club where music feels you. It was supposed to be my monumental breakthrough, my moment to step out of the suffocating shadows and into the blinding, incandescent glow of success. I was so utterly consumed by the glittering fantasy, I brazenly ignored the unsettling whispers, the strange, disturbing tales of missing patrons and the club's almost supernatural magnetic pull. I arrogantly dismissed them as mere marketing hype, a clever way to build mystique. What an absolute fool I was. I wish with every fiber of my being that I'd listened. This story, the one you're about to hear, isn't just about a club or a DJ set gone horribly wrong. It's about the insidious fusion of a real-world mystery and something ancient, something unspeakably primordial that ravenously feeds on our very essence. It's about the true, exorbitant price of ambition, the real, crushing cost of chasing a dream, and the chilling, inescapable realization that some doors, once violently wrenched open, can never be truly closed. So lean in, listen closer than you ever have before, and if you're brave enough to truly hear the full, unvarnished story, then subscribe and hit that bell. Tell me, what time are you listening to this? And from what city? The email landed in my inbox like a searing digital lightning bolt. Mother invites Talia Green to headline The Pulse, July 5th. I stared, transfixed at the screen, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Mother, not just any club. This was the club, a colossal leviathan of brutalist industrial design, nestled deep within the concrete sprawl of downtown Los Angeles, rumored to be built within an ancient telegraph center. Its reputation preceded it. Flawless, almost supernatural acoustics, floors that vibrated with the very heartbeat of the crowd, and linear strobes that sliced through the impenetrable darkness like ancient hungry eyes. It was where careers were forged in fire, where legends were born, or so I'd been relentlessly told. My tiny apartment, overflowing with dusty vinyl and worn-out headphones, suddenly felt a million miles away from the glittering, deceptive promise of Hollywood. I confirmed immediately. Of course, who in their right mind wouldn't? My manager, a perpetually stressed woman named Brenda, nearly shrieked with unbridled joy when I told her, "Talia, this is absolutely huge. No one gets a gig at Mother without being handpicked. This is it. This is everything." Her excitement was undeniably infectious, skillfully masking the faint, unsettling unease that had already begun to settle deep in my stomach. I spent days researching Mother, ravenously devouring every single article, every obsessive forum post, every grainy, flickering video. The club's official website was sleek, minimalist, and proudly boasted about its immersive sonic experience. But the deeper I relentlessly dug, the more unsettling, insidious details surfaced. There were hushed mentions of past incidents, of patrons who'd simply vanished, not just walked out and gone home, but literally ceased to exist. I found an old newspaper clipping, almost 10 years old, vividly describing a mass panic during a set, with several utterly unexplained disappearances. The police report, if it even existed, was nowhere to be found online, just whispers and wild theories, quickly dismissed by most as mere urban legends. One archived forum thread, however, seared itself into my attention. It was from an anonymous user, Watcher1, posting in a barely coherent, feverish stream of consciousness. "They don't just vanish," it read. "The club takes them. It's alive. It feeds. The music, it's the bait," I scoffed. But the words lingered, a chilling echo, in the darkest corners of my mind. Later that very day, an unmarked package arrived. Inside was a sleek, black VR headset, and a single, unlabeled disc. A small, ominous note was attached. "Experience, mother. Tonight." My fingers trembled uncontrollably as I picked it up. This wasn't just a gig. It felt terrifyingly like an initiation. The VR experience was utterly unlike anything I'd ever encountered. It wasn't merely a visual tour. It was a full-blown sensory assault. The bass vibrated deep through the headset, making my very bones hum with an alien resonance. The strobes pulsed, painting the simulated club in stark, disorienting flashes that tore at my perception. I saw crowds, a vast, undulating sea of faces, lost in a collective, almost unnatural trance, their bodies swaying in perfect, eerie synchronicity. The air felt thick, heavy, almost palpably alive, with raw energy. I could practically smell the sweat, the ozone, the faint, metallic tang that seemed to cling to everything. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and deeply, profoundly disturbing. As I navigated the virtual space, my eyes caught unsettling anomalies. Figures, at the extreme edges of the crowd, almost transparent, flickering in and out of existence, like malfunctioning holograms. They weren't quite human. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like marionettes, with hopelessly tangled strings. And then the very sound itself changed. The music, initially a driving, hypnotic techno, began to morph, twisting, distorting, becoming less like music and more like a resonant, primal scream that tore at the fabric of reality. The vibrations intensified, making my teeth ache with an unbearable pressure. I felt a strange, terrifying compulsion, an insatiable desire to move, to surrender completely to the rhythm, even as a primal, animalistic fear began to gnaw relentlessly at me. A deep, unsettling hum permeated everything, not from the speakers, but from the very core of the virtual club. Suddenly, the screen flickered violently, and the entire scene abruptly shifted. I was no longer in the main club area, but plunged into a dark, cavernous space. Deep beneath it, wires snaked along the walls, like thick, metallic, hungry vines. Strange, glowing conduits pulsed with an internal, malevolent light. In the very center, a colossal, organic-looking structure pulsed faintly, like a monstrous alien heart. It was partially obscured by oppressive shadow, but I could make out intricate, almost biological patterns etched into its pulsating surface. A voice, deep and impossibly resonant, not in my ears but directly in my mind, whispered, "It knows your name, it knows your music." The VR headset went dead, leaving me in the chilling silence of my apartment, my heart pounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs. The next day, I couldn't shake the images from the VR experience. The flickering figures, the monstrous, throbbing heart, the disembodied voice. It felt too real, too vivid, too utterly disturbing to be a mere simulation. I desperately tried to dismiss it as a clever marketing ploy, a way to build hype, but a cold, hard knot of dread tightened in my stomach, refusing to loosen its grip. I spent the morning reviewing my set list, trying with all my might to regain some semblance of normalcy. But every beat, every melody, seemed to carry a hidden, ominous undertone. I felt watched, even in the presumed safety of my own home. Later that afternoon, a grainy video file mysteriously appeared in my inbox. The sender was anonymous. The subject line a single cryptic, chilling word: beware. I hesitated, my hand trembling over the mouse, but an overwhelming curiosity, combined with a growing, inescapable sense of unease, pushed me to open it. The video was shaky, recorded on a phone, showing a past mother event. The crowd was a swirling vortex of ecstatic dancers, bathed in the pulsating, disorienting strobes. But as the camera slowly panned, I saw it, the exact same flickering, distorted figures from my VR experience, moving eerily through the crowd, almost invisible, like terrifying glitches in reality. Then, the video zoomed in on the DJ booth. The DJ, a man I vaguely recognized from online forums, was swaying erratically to the beat, his eyes wide and horrifyingly vacant. His movements grew erratic, jerky, as if he were violently fighting an unseen force. His hands, still on the mixer, were trembling uncontrollably. Suddenly, the music abruptly cut out. A collective, terrified gasp rippled through the stunned crowd. The DJ let out a guttural, inhuman scream, his body contorting in a horrifying, unnatural way, and then he simply dissolved. Not a splatter of blood, not a collapse, just a shimmering distortion in the air, like heat haze. And then he was utterly gone. The camera dropped, the video ending abruptly. I stared at the blank screen, my breath caught in my throat, my mind reeling. This wasn't some clever effect. This was disturbingly real, and the chilling, inescapable thought echoed in my mind. He knew my name, though I hadn't told him. Sleep became a luxurious indulgence I simply couldn't afford. The image of the dissolving DJ haunted my nightmares, replaying endlessly in a loop of profound distress. My hands, usually steady and confident on the decks, now trembled uncontrollably. Brenda, noticing my alarming pallor and increasingly erratic behavior, urgently urged me to take a break. "You're stressed, Talia. This mother gig is a really big deal. Just relax." But how could I possibly relax when the specter of a vanished DJ floated perpetually before my eyes? I knew, with absolute certainty, I had to find answers, to understand what I was truly walking into. I turned to the only place I knew might hold hidden, terrible truths, the forgotten, dusty corners of the internet. I delved deep into obscure online archives, ancient newsgroup discussions, and even darker, more forbidden corners of the web. I relentlessly searched for mother disappearances, telegraph center incidents, sonic experiments. My persistence, fueled by growing dread, finally paid off. I stumbled upon a declassified government document, heavily redacted, detailing a clandestine project from the 1970s called Project Echo. It involved sinister sonic frequencies, disturbing brainwave manipulation, and something chillingly described as resonant energy harvesting. The specified location, a former telegraph center in downtown Los Angeles. A cold, creeping dread seeped into my very bones. The document hinted at unforeseen side effects and unstable energy conduits. It was all highly technical, riddled with scientific jargon, but the implications were utterly disturbing. This wasn't just a club. It was a disturbing remnant of a forgotten, catastrophic experiment. One paragraph, however, stood out, underlined in a faded red ink in the scanned document, drawing my gaze like a magnet. It spoke of a symbiotic entity, an anomalous energy signature that seem to respond to certain frequencies. It feeds on emotional discharge, the text chillingly stated, especially fear and ecstasy, amplifying them to a critical point where the subject undergoes molecular destabilization, disappearance. The fragmented pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, undeniable certainty. Mother wasn't just built on a cursed site, it was an integral part of the curse itself. The entity, the mother, was terrifyingly alive, and it used the club as its hunting ground, the music as its insidious lure. I desperately needed to find someone, anyone, who had experienced Mother and miraculously lived to tell the terrifying tale. My online searches grew more desperate, focusing obsessively on personal accounts rather than official sanitized reports. It led me to an obscure online support group, Echoes of the Night, a small tight-knit community of individuals who vehemently claim to have survived anomalous events at various energy hubs around the world. I posted, cautiously, about my upcoming gig at Mother, carefully hinting at my growing, suffocating unease. Within minutes, a private message mysteriously arrived from a user named Oracle X. "Don't go to Mother," it read, its words stark and ominous. "I was there during the Pulse 5 years ago. I saw it. The entity. It uses the sound, the light. It gets inside your head." I messaged back frantically, my fingers flying across the keyboard, pleading for details. Oracle X, who identified himself as Mark, reluctantly agreed to a video call. His face, when it appeared on my screen, was gaunt, almost skeletal, his eyes haunted by unspeakable horrors. He spoke in a low, rapid, almost frenzied voice, recounting his disturbing experience. He described the overwhelming, intoxicating of euphoria, the feeling of being utterly consumed by the music, then the sickening shift, the music transforming into a cacophony of distorted screams, the lights twisting into disorienting madness, the floor vibrating with an unnatural, malevolent intensity. He saw people around him, their bodies shimmering, then fading, like old photographs dissolving in a dying light. He only escaped because he had a sudden, inexplicable panic attack and collapsed, losing consciousness just as the disappearances began. They weren't just random disappearances, Mark whispered, his voice cracking with raw emotion. It takes those who are most receptive, those who give themselves fully to the experience. It amplifies their emotions until they reach a breaking point. Then it consumes them. It's a parasite, Telia, a techno-organic creature that feeds on human energy. And the DJs, they're its conduits, its unwitting accomplices. He paused, his eyes wide with terror. The bartender at Mother has been working there for 30 years, and not a single one of his regulars is alive. He warned me not to order the special. I wish I'd listened. He showed me a scar, a strange, raised pattern on his forearm, eerily resembling a circuit board. "It branded me," he said, his voice a ragged whisper, a reminder, a warning. "Now it's your turn." The video call suddenly, abruptly cut out. Mark's words chilled me to the bone, echoing the dread. A parasite, a techno-organic creature. It sounded utterly bizarre, but it resonated with chilling accuracy, with the declassified document, with the disturbing VR experience, with the terrifying vanishing DJ. I had to know more about the sinister origins of Mother, about the Telegraph Center itself. I remembered an old City Archives website mentioned in a local history blog. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble. But I was desperate. I spent countless hours sifting through digitized building permits, faded blueprints, and ancient property records, and then I found it, a series of scanned journal entries, dated from the early 1970s, belonging to an architect named Elias Thorne, the original designer of the Telegraph Center. His early entries were mundane, discussing structural integrity and material choices, but gradually his tone shifted, becoming increasingly disturbed. He wrote of strange fluctuating energy readings, of a pulsating core deep beneath the site, of a presence that seemed to subtly influence his very designs. "It whispers to me," he wrote, in a frantic hand, "shows me forms, sounds. It promises a connection beyond human understanding." He chillingly described the building as a receiver, a transformer, meticulously designed to channel the unseen. The later entries became increasingly paranoid, spiraling into madness. "It feeds on me," Thorne scribbled in a frantic, almost illegible hand, "on my thoughts, my energy. It craves more. It wants a symphony of souls." He detailed how he was compelled, against his will, to integrate strange, organic-looking conduits into the building's infrastructure, disturbing designs that were never on the original blueprints. His final entry was profoundly simple, chilling me to my core. "The mother awakens, it sings, and I am its first note." His journal ended there, abruptly. Thorne had vanished shortly after the Telegraph Center was completed, his disappearance attributed to possible self-harm. His body never recovered. The disturbing knowledge that the club itself was a monstrous instrument, an insidious lure, forged by a man driven to utter madness, filled me with a primal, suffocating fear. The date of my settled mother loomed, an inevitable, terrifying judgment. I felt a growing sense of detachment, a quiet, profound despair settling over me like a shroud. My hands felt numb, my mind a chaotic swirl of conflicting, disturbing information. I knew, with a crushing certainty, I couldn't back out. Not now. It felt like I was being pulled by an invisible, malevolent current, a fate I couldn't escape. I decided to make one last, desperate attempt to understand the enemy, to find its weakness. I remembered Mark's words about energy hubs. If Mother was one, perhaps there were others, and perhaps there were others who had fought back and survived. My search led me down a rabbit hole of esoteric theories and fringe science, bordering on the bizarre. I found references to resonant frequencies, dimensional anchors, and psychic amplifiers. One obscure paper, published by a disgraced parapsychologist, chillingly posited the existence of interdimensional parasites that fed ravenously on human bioenergy. It described them as existing on a vibrational plane slightly out of sync with our own, manifesting only when certain energetic conditions were met. The paper mentioned a series of anomalous energy spikes, recorded in various isolated or closed locations throughout the decades, always, without fail, followed by unexplained disappearances. One such location was a now abandoned underground prison in Nevada, Block D. The paper even included a cryptic footnote: "The empty cells, but the guards still hear the screams." The prison officially closed decades ago, but local legends persisted, whispered in hushed tones. Prisoners would vanish from their cells, leaving absolutely no trace. The official explanation was mass escapes, but the cells were locked from the outside. No one could explain how they simply evaporated. I found an old, grainy interview with a retired prison guard. His face, a roadmap of deep-seated fear. He spoke of a singing that came from the lower levels, a sound that made your teeth ache and your mind fray. "This prison has 13 floors underground," he whispered, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "Below that, they don't return. They built the prison on a cursed site. Now something lives there." The chilling, horrifying realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Mother wasn't unique. It was part of a larger, disturbing network, a system of feeding grounds for this unspeakable entity. The prison in Nevada, The old telegraph center. What else? The horror expanded, becoming utterly boundless. The day of the mother gig arrived, heavy and oppressive, filled with a suffocating dread. I arrived at the club, its colossal brutalist facade looming over me like a hungry prehistoric beast. The air itself seemed to hum with a low, resonant frequency, a palpable vibration of malevolence inside. The sheer scale of the place was overwhelming, almost paralyzing. The main hall was a cavernous, echoing space, designed to amplify sound and light into a dizzying assault on the senses. My equipment was meticulously set up in the DJ booth, a raised platform at the very heart of the main hall, overlooking the vast, empty dance floor. I felt a profound chill, despite the oppressive heat emanating from the technical equipment. As I tested the sound system, a low, guttural thrum resonated through the floor, making my teeth ache with an unbearable pressure. It wasn't part of the music. It was something deeper, something terrifyingly alive. The linear strobes flickered, not in sync with my test track, but with an erratic, almost sentient rhythm, like a monstrous eye, blinking. I noticed faint, almost imperceptible scratches etched onto the wall behind the DJ booth. They weren't random marks. They seemed to form patterns, almost like ancient script or distorted musical notation. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. Each night, there were more. Someone was leaving me cryptic notes. Don't look back. A sudden sharp crack echoed from the wall, reverberating through the vast space. A new set of scratches appeared, seemingly from nowhere, deeper, more aggressive than the others. Gouged into the plaster, they formed a single, chilling phrase. Now it's your turn. A cold, crushing dread washed over me, a wave of pure terror. This wasn't some past victim's lament. This was a direct, personal message from the entity itself. It knew I was investigating. It knew I was afraid, and it was waiting. The club doors opened at midnight, releasing a torrent of sound and light into the night. The crowd flooded in, a tumultuous sea of eager faces, all ready to lose themselves completely in the intoxicating embrace of the music. The energy was palpable, a tangible current that hummed through the very air, vibrating with anticipation. I looked out at them, a terrifying mixture of morbid fascination and abject terror. They were lambs to the slaughter, drawn by the insidious siren song of Mother. My hands surprisingly felt steady as I began my set. I needed to focus, to control the music, to control the beast. My initial tracks were pulsating, techno, designed to build raw energy, to get the crowd moving, a living, breathing wave of humanity. The lights pulsed in perfect, rhythmic time, with the beat, the vibrations from the floor intensifying with each bone-jarring drop. I watched the crowd, a hypnotic blur of gyrating bodies, lost in the rhythm. I saw the first flicker. At the edge of the dance floor, a figure seemed to waver, like heat rising from asphalt on a sweltering day. Then another, and another. These weren't the phantom figures from the VR experience. These were real people, their forms distorting, their outlines blurring, dissolving at the edges. A low, resonant hum began to permeate the club, overriding the music, shaking the very foundations with its malevolent power. It wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from below, from deep within the earth. The lights shifted, the strobes flashing at a frantic, disorienting pace, completely independent of my music, dancing to their own horrifying tune. The crowd's movements became more erratic, almost convulsive, their bodies twisting unnaturally, Their eyes, wide and horrifyingly vacant, stared ahead, unseeing, unfocused. They were no longer dancing. They were marionettes, pulled by unseen, spectral strings. The humming grew into a deafening roar, a sound that pierced my very bones, tearing at my sanity. The air crackled with an unseen, malevolent energy. I could feel the entity's presence, vast and ancient, rising from beneath the club, reaching out, consuming. Panic clawed at my throat, a desperate choking sensation, but I fought it with every ounce of my being. I had to. I thought of Mark, of Elias Thorne, of all the others who had been consumed, utterly obliterated. I wouldn't be another note in its terrifying, monstrous symphony. I desperately tried to change the music, to disrupt the entity's monstrous rhythm, but my controls were utterly unresponsive. The mixer, the decks, they were dead, lifeless. The sound, the lights, they were no longer mine to command. They were Mother's. The figures in the crowd were dissolving faster now, their screams silent as they simply flickered out of existence, leaving behind only the faintest shimmer of residual, terrifying energy. I looked down at my hands. They were starting to glow faintly, an unnatural, phosphorescent luminescence emanating from my very skin. The entity was trying to consume me, to make me its conduit, its final, grand, horrifying sacrifice. With a sudden, explosive surge of adrenaline, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror, I violently ripped off my headphones. The roar of the entity was overwhelming now, a cacophony of distorted screams and primal, insatiable hunger, echoing directly inside my head. My eyes darted frantically around, searching for an escape. Anything. The emergency exit was at the far end of the club, a distant, tantalizing pinprick of light. I knew, with a crushing certainty, I couldn't make it, but then I saw it, a heavy emergency power cutoff switch, tucked away in a shadowed alcove, directly behind the DJ booth. It was my only chance, a desperate, all-or-nothing gamble. My body felt impossibly heavy, as if an invisible force was pulling me down, anchoring me relentlessly to the spot. The glowing intensified, a searing, burning sensation, spreading rapidly through my limbs, consuming me. I could feel its tendrils, its vast, alien consciousness, probing my mind, trying to merge, to utterly consume. It wanted my consciousness, my amplified emotions, my fear, my desperation. It wanted the final, grand, horrifying performance. With a guttural primal cry, I fought through the overwhelming, suffocating pressure, staggering, lurching towards the power switch. Each agonizing step was a brutal battle against an unseen current that sought to hold me back. The entity roared, a sound that was less noise and more a violent tearing of reality itself. The figures dissolving in the crowd multiplied, their silent disappearances a macabre, terrifying dance of finality. My skin felt like it was burning from the inside out, the light emanating from me, growing brighter, a blazing beacon for the predator. I lunged for the switch, my fingers scrabbling frantically against the cold, unyielding metal. It was heavy, stiff, as if stubbornly reluctant to yield. It fought back, with an unseen force, with a chilling, tangible cold. With a final, desperate heave, I slammed the switch down with all my might. The colossal roar of the entity died instantly, replaced by an ear-splitting shriek of pure, agonizing static that vibrated through my very bones. The lights flickered wildly, convulsively, then died, plunging the club into near total darkness, illuminated only by the faint dying glow of the dissolving figures, Like embers fading, the vibrations ceased. The oppressive, malevolent hum vanished completely. The entity, suddenly starved, recoiled with a shudder, but it wasn't gone. I could still feel its presence, a faint, lingering echo in the oppressive darkness, a terrifying promise of its eventual, inevitable return, and I knew, with a horrifying, crushing certainty, that I had merely delayed the inevitable. The silence that followed was more terrifying, more profound than the chaos that had just unfolded. A few confused, bewildered murmurs rose from the surviving crowd, their faces pale, their eyes wide with dazed disorientation and residual fear. The pungent scent of ozone lingered heavily in the air, a metallic tang that spoke of raw, unleashed energy and unseen, unspeakable horrors. I stumbled out of the club, my legs trembling uncontrollably, my body aching with a profound exhaustion, the ghost of the entity's terrifying roar still echoing in my ears, a constant, chilling reminder. I never looked back. What happened that night at Mother was officially dismissed as a mass panic, a mere technical malfunction. The disappearances were conveniently attributed to the chaos, people simply getting lost in the crowd, leaving early. But I know the chilling truth. I saw the silent vanishes, felt the entity's chilling, oppressive presence, heard its guttural, monstrous song. It was terrifyingly real, and it's still out there, lurking. The club, of course, is officially closed now. They've boarded it up, put up condemned signs, hoping to contain the horror within. But I know something still moves below, dormant, waiting patiently. I feel it, a faint vibration in the ground beneath my feet, a low hum that sometimes permeates the quiet, suffocating stillness of my apartment. I still find those unsettling scratches on my wall, though I live utterly alone. Every single night, there are more. The price of truth, I've learned, is a heavy one, almost unbearable. I lost my career, my sanity, perhaps even a part of my very soul that night. My ambition, once a driving, burning force, is now a distant, hollow echo, a mere whisper of what once was. But I survived, and I carry the crushing burden of that knowledge, a chilling lullaby that plays on repeat in the deepest, darkest corners of my mind. The mother is sleeping, but it's not dead, and one day it will awaken, hungrier and more malevolent than ever before. Share this story if you dare. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe if you want to hear more about the unseen horrors that lurk just beyond the veil of our reality. Be warned though, some truths, once known, cannot be unlearned.